Good afternoon. This is a Devar Torah on Parashat Yisro. This is a short parsha in length, but a great, very important parsha in depth. It begins with Moshe's father-in-law Yitro visiting them at the camp by Har Sinai, together with Zipporah, Moshe's wife, and Gershom and Eliezer, their sons. And he is greeted by everybody, by the elders, Moshe, and then he notices Moshe's system of sitting from morning to night while people are bringing their cases, and he points out that this is not a particularly good thing to do, because of the people lining up, and it's exhausting Moshe. And the system he suggests instead is that they appoint different levels of judges for the 1,000 families, 150 and 10, so that they could, and only the important cases will come to Moshe, where he needs to think about it or get an answer from Hashem. Now, question is why? As explained by one of my teachers, Rabbi Uziel Molesky, Zikman Tzedek L'Bracha, he saw something that neither Moshe, Aaron, or the elders could see, which was namely that the parties there were not really wanting to learn what the true Torah, what the true meaning and mitzvahs were, and what Hashem commanded. All they were was interested in their lawsuits, their claims. They were very litigious people. And therefore, and why was it Yisro saw that? Because they were litigating like the rest of the nations, just interested in property and money and ego, and not interested in what Hashem commanded. So that is one thing. And then what came up after that is Hashem offers the Torah to the Jewish people through Moshe. They accept. They have to prepare for 3 days. And after preparing for 3 days, Hashem comes down Sinai. They hear the first of the two of the Aseros B'Yibos, 10 commandments, actually 14 mitzvahs, 10 commandments. And what happens then? After the first two, they asked Moshe to speak, to let Hashem speak to him, and then he'll pass it on to them. Hashem made a miracle that Moshe's voice was magnified, that the entire 3.5, 4 million people there, 600,000 men plus all the women and children could hear it. And after that, they realized later they regretted it. They said, because what happened after they heard Hashem's voice each time, they died, and he had to push the Neshimas back in because they wanted to go to the source of the Neshimas. If they had done that 8 more times, they would have been such a spiritual level, they would not have succumbed to the golden calf, test of the golden calf later. And Moshe would have gone into Israel with them. First, second, third temples would have been the same. And Messianic days would have been right there and then. Unfortunately, that did not happen. The parsha then goes on. And told them after that, they were in awe of everything that happened. Hashem told Moshe to speak to the children of Israel. You've seen that I have spoken for you in heaven. They should not make any images of themselves, of God themselves, and an altar of earth you should make, an elevation of and peace of it, you should be doing it. And when you make the stones, they cannot be hewn by metal instruments or anything else. And they had to make steps. They couldn't go up steps. They went up a ramp so that no nakedness will be uncovered by it. And that is how the Parsha ends. And next week's going to start with it's going to start with the Eila HaMishpatim. These are the laws. I'll explain what that means next week. But there's a connection between what we call the spiritual, the mitzvahs of Adam Lamakom, and the mitzvahs of Adam Lachaveru. Now, the thing I would like to speak about here is one of the mitzvahs, and the mitzvah that we're talking about. I would like to go to the last of the mitzvahs here. And what is that mitzvah? It's the last of the Aseros of Dibros, which it says, Lo ta'amud be'erecha, lo ta'amud eshet re'echa, la'avdo misaso, v'shoro v'chamaro, v'kol asher le'erecha. You shall not covet your fellow's house, you shall not covet your fellow's wife, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your fellow. And in addition, in addition to the mitzvah before that says, one of the things you should not do is you below the Tanaver Reka Sheka, you should not bear false witness against your fellow. So the first 5 mitzvah, the Seros of Dibros, man to Makom, man to and woman to their God. The next 5, Adam Lachavero, man to his fellow man or woman. And what I would like to look at is the order of this is the last of the Aseros of Dibros. After all many other high concepts of things you shouldn't do and how you should get close to Hashem and not worship others, it ends with this mitzvah now of not coveting. Now, let's look at the order of, I'd like to look at the order of the mitzvahs. This 10th mitzvah, 10th Yisros of Dibros, as explained by a number of sources, is directly related to the 10 sayings with which Hashem created the world. And what was that? First 10th saying was in Bereshis, that he should create, let us create man and woman created he, they, and man and woman were created. And what is the equivalent of that? It's equivalent also to the first of the tests of Abraham, which was that he hid out in a cave from age 3 to 13, because he came to a revelation of Hashem through observing nature and realizing there had to be a supreme being, there had to be Hashem. And it's also tied to the 10, the first of the 10 plagues, which is the plague of blood. Now, I'd like to take a look at this. The 10 sayings was to design the purpose, and what was the ultimate purpose of the creation was the creation of man and woman, because without the humans, there was no point in creating the universe. That was its whole goal, so that we could become elevated and get rewarded. Now, after 20 generations, which included the Mabul, the flood, and then the Tower of Babel, the world as a whole did not live up to it. Originally, Hashem's plan was to give the Torah to the whole world, didn't live up to it. So then there had to be one people, which became the Jewish people. Now, what were the 10 tests of Abraham were to elevate the people which we all come from Abraham, was to elevate the people by him being elevated. And they went from, and they did so. However, unfortunately, when we went down to Egypt, the Jewish people, Yaakov and his children, we went back down. But so the 10 tests were strictly for Abraham, and by implication, Yitzhak, Yaakov, and all their descendants. But it wasn't broadcast worldwide. It wasn't a public thing. Now, the second of the tests, now the 10 plague, but the world hadn't learned about this, Abraham did. Now, with the 10 plagues, Hashem, the 10 Malchus, Hashem was showing that he is the master of everything. He is the master of both nature and of man. 10 plagues, he showed how he controlled nature. And culminating with the 10th plague, the killing of the firstborn. However, and the second manifestation was at the Yam Suf, which was Bishala, last week's Parsha, but where the world saw the power of Hashem over man, when the Pharaoh's entire army, according to some sources, even Pharaoh, were all wiped out. Now, so all that going to become the people that were going to lead the whole world ultimately, the ultimate redemption, was the Aseros Adibros, the 10 Commandments. Now, and therefore, they all contain important principles. Now, embedded within that 10th commandment, Asher L'Reacha, you should not covet your neighbor's, I wish that is the end, you should not covet your neighbor's property, his wife, his animals, anything that's your neighbor, is teaching a fundamental principle. Now, to elucidate that more, if one looks at the Pasuk, it had those verses that make up a Seros of Dibros. There are 620 letters. Now, 613 of the 613 commandments will still follow. In fact, there's a book that indicates which letter it represents which mitzvah. And ultimately, at that point, what happens is we have the final other 7, they say are rabbinical rules, according to many. The Shlara Kodesh, famous in his famous commentary on Chumash, Torah, said the following, that he didn't hold with that 7 rabbinical laws. He said the last extra 7 letters are Shel L'Re'echa. Now, he said there's really 3 levels in mitzvahs, commandments. Before, the normal ones are Adam L'Chavero, man to his fellow man or woman. And the next one after that is Adam L'Makom. He said there's a 3rd one. He said that the first one is Shel L'Re'echa, is teaching that before you can do any mitzvahs, you must respect your fellow man. You have to respect him, or woman, man or woman. You have to respect them and treat them as they're all equally part of the divine plan. Hashem created each one of us uniquely, as the Rosh Yeshiva of Nota Shila of Rosmak said in a shir I heard of his, that we all have a role to play in the celestial symphony. Very well put, way of stating it. And so what he is saying, only when you have that respect, and something I'll speak about another time, Rabbi Zakiva's 24,000 students didn't have that respect, and we get to that time of year, I'll speak about it more, why they had to die because of that. And there has to be that respect. Now, only once one has that respect can one do the mitzvahs of Adam L'Chavero, man or woman to their fellow man or woman, because only if you truly respect them can you get to the level of being able to do mitzvahs. If there's any jealousy or one covets, or not even covets, just is jealous, one level even below coveting, one cannot properly do the mitzvahs to one's fellow man, woman, and only then after you do the mitzvahs involving Adam L'Chavero can you possibly properly serve Hashem, which represents the first of the five Yisros and Dibros, and many other mitzvahs. Now, having said that, we can understand a very famous story. Here's the Gemara. There was a person who wanted to become a ger, a convert, and asked to learn the Torah while standing on 1 foot only. Now, standing on that 1 foot, you can't learn very much. Shammai, the famous Rabbi Shammai, heard him, threw him out. Hillel said, whatever, love your neighbor yourself, do not do anything that's reprehensible to you, don't do to your neighbor. In other words, and what does that mean? In other words, all of that is the same concept of loving, of having a love your fellow man or woman, accepting them as equal to you before you can do the mitzvahs. Now, taking it on a higher spiritual level, as explained in Sefer Gulim, it goes one step further. What is this one step further? This one step further is that the mitzvah goes that as explained by the Leshem and others, there were 9 that he came from a previous generation, what's called the 974 generations before Adam and Chava and the creation as we understand it. And in that creation, what occurred was that everything was in terms of absolute. In fact, it was so absolute kindness, absolute strictness, that the spiritual vessels, higher and higher worlds broke, and there had to be a tikkun, a whole change. And now things have to intermix. Everything has to work together, the different qualities. Hesed, Gevurah, the Parashat, all these have to mix together. And only then can we, with unity, have fulfilled the divine purpose. And so when Hillel said that, he was basically saying you got to work together to that ger, potential ger. And Shammai was saying, go back to where you came from. You don't belong in this world because you stand on your own. Now, so what do we take from all this? One thing we can take is that if we truly fulfill this purpose, and especially in the challenging time we're living through now, if we can maintain the Octus unity or respect for one or each other, despite our views, we will reach our potential very soon. And I want to wish you a good Shabbos and a Shabbat Shalom.